Pharmaceutical Processing, in conjunction with INTERPHEX 2016, presents INTERPHEX Live.
Today, what we're going to be talking about, our next one is preparing for an FDA audit. This is a particularly favorite one of mine because we always seem to have, everybody's always worrying about that one. The beauty of what we got today is a couple of both old friends of mine, Joe McGinnis, who is now a regulatory compliance advisor at J&J, was a field investigator, which he and I have run across each other a few times. And we have Dina Maines, which was always on the inside, so it's sort of like cops and robbers here, So we're gonna have both sides of the story today. So we kind of set it up so that we can see different perspectives. And I promised I wouldn't put anybody on the spot, right, Joe? Yeah. That means no pictures, right? It's okay. Now, oh, sorry, I got it. All right, jeez. Too many instructions here. I'm Italian, I can't follow all this stuff. Okay. So I think it's a unique opportunity. I think what we're going to try to do is we could probably take it from me. They could fill 2 hours talking. So what I'm going to try to do is get as much information going. But I think where the real value is, I'm going to try to open it up for questions early on. So having said that, so Dina, we'll start with you. Put you right on the spot here. So bottom line is, I've got FDA's coming to visit because they like me. So what are the significant preparatory changes we in the industry should be addressing? I mean, let's get it right out there. What are the ones and what do we got to do?
I think the overall concept of you have an FDA inspection and you're good to go for the next 2 or 3 years is one that it's a position you can't take anymore. You have to be ready every single day for an FDA regulatory inspection. You've got to have a framework in place. You've got to be adequately prepared. You have to have your rules of engagement laid out as to who's doing what on first and second base. You have to be prepared, number one. Number two, I think that we also have to be prepared that the FDA is coming in with a much tighter set of expectations than what they may have in the past, particularly in sending in investigators. I think that you're going to find that there's more technical understanding of products and processes during inspections than what we may have seen in the past. So I think that you also have to make sure that you have a good and firm understanding of your processes and your technologies.
So where do we normally fall apart? What are the common inadequacies?
Well, almost 9 times out of 10, everybody gets into trouble for when things go wrong, right? When you've got a deviation, or you've got a product failure, or you've got materials that are non-conforming. They look at the things that go wrong, not all the 100 things that you do right every day. Right? So they're always looking at how you handle exceptions, your OOSs or your out of trends. They're looking to see how well you monitor yourself. Are you reporting internally your quality metrics to executive management, and is executive management engaged with what's happening within your firm?
All right. Well, Joe, I mean, so both those questions directed at you. I mean, Dina made a comment about it ain't the same game anymore. So how have you seen it in your career change to where we're being inspected and how?
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Anytime, Joe.
And any questions that you have, we're going to try to answer your questions today. There's a few different types of inspections, right? You have the statutory obligation inspection that Dina refers to every 2 years. You're going to be inspected. That's a statutory congressional obligation. Then there's the pre-approval inspections, which is a different animal. And then there's the for-cause inspections. There's a complaint, a consumer complaint, a trade complaint, or some other reason, a recall for an investigator to go out to your firm. So if it's a pre-approval inspection, you can guarantee that the investigator is going to be taught to look at the product development report, the validation protocol, and to request all correspondence with the agency. Those are 3, right off the bat. Those things, you can expect to have requested. For a statutory obligation, each district office, there's 20 district offices in the United States. They each have an investigations branch and they have a compliance branch. There's 1 district director. That's going to change. There's a reorganization that's occurring. It has already occurred in the centers. Each of the centers has been reorganized. The Center for Drugs, for example, is divided into the pre-approval section and the compliance section. They like to be referred to as the carrot and the stick. So the stick is the compliance side. So, to answer your question, how have things changed? the agency recognizes the advancements in technology, and they know that the investigators need to be a step above from what they used to be, right? What they used to be were sometimes right out of college. Kids would have the minimum requirement to be a consumer safety officer is 30 science credits. Any science major could be an investigator. That's a minimum. Now we see, so much technology that the agency knows that they need to increase that. So one area would be GDUFA, the Generic Drug User Fee Act, right? The agency hired investigators at a higher level to come in with more technical background. Some of these new hires are, people with industry experience, sometimes 10 years experience. They may have the technical expertise, but now they need to learn how to be an investigator, right? So we have classes that we teach all the new investigators, whether they are these new GDUFA hires or right out of college, 22-year-olds. They go through drug school. It's a 3-week course, law and evidence development. There's micro courses that they can take. There's all types of training. And these are provided within the first couple of years of being on the job. The problem is, after getting all of that training and some on-the-job training, they go to industry. I happen to stay for 21 years. I was a commissioned officer in the public health service, and sometimes you get those officers sticking around, and then they start to learn a little bit more than these young kids. But that's what you're dealing with. There is a reorg. That reorganization is coming. I'm not sure when, but it's on its way.
We always hear something about, Joe, I think one of the questions that we had talked about, you always hear something about the Cedars super office. So what exactly does that mean? I mean,
Super office?
yeah, what is that? Does that mean we're only people from Marvel Comics go? Or?
Well, the Center for Drugs, right?
Yeah.
You have, how many? There's 6 centers now, with the Center for Tobacco was just added. So the Center for Drugs, Janet Woodcock has been the lead of the Center for Drugs for ages. It used to be one big organization, and it still is, but now they're broken into different segments.
Okay.
And online, you can get the organizational chart on the FDA website. Just go to the drug site, and you can click and see how it's now split up.
Right.
And as I said before, it's, in the past, the pre-approval, the foreign, and the domestic compliance divisions were all under one component. And back in the day, that was head by Joe Famulari and his group. That's split up now. So now you have just one compliance arm, and then the reviewers and the pre-approval segments is a whole different branch. So that's what they're really referring to.
I got you. Okay, so let me. I don't know about the rest of you. The guys who really make me shiver are the guys who ask questions out of stupidity. The guy doesn't know anything about what he's coming in to investigate, and he starts throwing questions at me. Problem with that is, that's the ones that definitely get you in trouble. That invariably, questions asked in ignorance wind up in a fishing expedition. Just personal experience, shall we say. So let me, Dina, so how can companies prepare for these kind of inspections other than keeping the techno geeks like me hidden in the back? How's that work?
I think if you've got an innovative or different technology, having an introduction, a PowerPoint presentation prepared that can take someone through the technology, even though they've probably reviewed the NDA and seen process flow charts, sometimes just having a presentation that has pictorial representations of the equipment and the process train is a good thing to have. Maybe even being able to do a brief overview of the company itself so the investigator has a little bit of background about how the product and the process and the company came to be. So I think that's all part of your preparation. Additional things that you want to do as far as preparation are concerned are pull together your lists. Lists of OOSs, lists of events, lists of investigation, lists of out of trend. The more lists, change controls, complaints, the more lists that you have pulled together, ready to go when they walk in the door, the better off you'll fare, because those are going to be some of the first things that they're going to ask for on that first day, typically after an introduction and then a tour. Then they sit down and start asking for the lists. So having those lists prepared and updating them on a weekly basis so that you're prepared every day is a really, really strong thing to do.
Is that the same on a PAI or a general? I mean, is a PAI different, or how's this?
Well, PAI is going to be focused on the new product and process, obviously, but at the same time, it doesn't preclude you from being ready for a general inspection at the same time, which could occur. You could have both occurring at the same time if you're due on your cycle.
Okay. Joe, let me ask you a question. I mean, bottom line is there's a lot of new technology out there. So what happens nowadays if, let's say investigator comes in and he runs into stuff he doesn't know. How's the game played now?
Well, that's a great question. And, the investigators, their title is Consumer Safety Officer. I mentioned that before. And their primary job is to protect the consumers in the United States and abroad. So, whenever I gave I started out as a consumer safety officer. I was there for 6 years, and then I moved over to New Jersey compliance, and then I was the director of compliance in New Jersey. Whenever I gave a talk, I would always fit in the fact that whenever an investigator is at your firm, you should try to help them. And I would get smirks and smiles from everybody, but everyone, including everyone in this room, is a consumer. So I would give them the example. God forbid, you're on your way home today, you get in a car accident, you're rushed to the emergency room, and you're given a prophylactic antibiotic. You sure as heck want to make sure that would want to make sure that the investigator who just did the inspection at the firm that made that penicillin or whatever antibiotic did a thorough job, right? So that's where I come from. I loved my job. My job was easy. And when I said that to people, how could, being the director of compliance be easy? It was easy. I simply said to myself, would I allow that product to be given to my kids, my wife, my family? And some are black and some are white, and then there's a whole area of gray. But then you got to say to yourself, hey, this is where the rubber meets the road. Would I allow that product that has this problem, the firm is saying this, the investigator is saying this, we have come to a referee, make a call. And when you got to put it on the fact that I'm going to say yes or no, that's the most difficult part of the job, keeping good products on the market and taking the bad products off the market. So how do you handle the increase in technology? That was the question. For a long time, the agency had a way of doing business, and it was a geographic disbursement of these 20 different district offices. The proposal for reorganization is now going to rather having a geographic way of doing business to a product line way of doing business. So specific investigators would have one tract, okay? They're gonna be a drug, in the drug tract, they're gonna strive to be a drug expert. Device expert. Food, biologicals. In years ago, people would do different types of inspections, and you could never really get to be an expert if you kept on doing different types of inspections. The agency recognized that. They are going to a programmatic way of doing it. They have increased their IT systems to allow the field to speak with the experts in the centers, which is, after they get their act together, it's going to be a different way of doing business because investigators can be in the field and collect a document and then send it to Russ Soma, who's a solid dosage, oral dosage form expert, one of the top guys in the country, in the world, and have him assess that document and say to the investigator, hey, when you go back to so-and-so, ask them this, this, and this. So it's going to be pretty good for the agency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. But let me ask you, so getting back to, so what happens when this thing goes sideways, all right? So obviously they can avail themselves of a lot of information from their network. There's technology. I mean, so, they've changed with the time. So, obviously, let's talk about it. So what happens when things go sideways, and how do you start to manage this sort of stuff, Dina? I mean, I'm sure you've never been involved in a car accident like that, right? Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah, I've lived through a few, I think. I think it's really important that you have to take a step back and take the emotion out of the issue. In other words, when an investigator finds something that may be problematic, they're going to want to dig and dig and dig and dig until they're satisfied that is this an issue or is this not an issue. You have to be very patient. This isn't something personal. They're there to do the job just like we're there every day to do our job. So I think it's really important to keep the emotion down, not let the tension come into the room, still keep that impression of openness and free engagement going between yourself and the investigator if you happen to be in the room or hosting. It's really important to take a back seat and kind of pull it back when things start to escalate. I think it's really important, but also just being open and transparent, and if it's taking some time to get a report or a document pulled together, make sure you let them know that we're trying to get this pulled together for you, so give them an update on where you are. Sometimes you may be in a company that has the data that may have supported some of the work during development, but nobody ever pulled a report together. It's okay to say, look, we had the data, but we never put the report together. Do you want us to give you the report in the next day or so? Or would you like to go ahead and start to see the data now? So give them some options, give them some alternatives, and a lot of the strategy that takes place around this is happening in the back room, which is probably the most important piece of an investigation, is the support that you get from the people that are working in the back room. I use it to call it the readiness room, but other people have called it the war room in the past. I think it's just a general mindset that I have when it comes to inspections and readiness, that I want to be ready every day. And I like to keep a positive spin on an inspection because they are there to do a job. And we do want to make sure that we support them appropriately.
Okay, I mean, so what's the trigger? I mean, yeah, okay, fine. We've all been down. There's no double signatures. There's no date, blah, blah, blah. What's the trigger? What are they taught to look for, Joe? I mean, you know, you tell me. I mean, there's got to be, they got to smell a rat. That's where I'm at, you know what I mean?
The investigators are taught to go into every inspection with an open mind, not to have preconceived notions. As I mentioned before, there's 10 years worth of history in every district office file on every company. That's paper-wise. They're moving to electronic. All field alerts, complaints, recalls, all of that is in that file. The investigator has that. So, you know, knowing that going in, that's their basic. What they're taught as an investigator is, you know, as I mentioned, they go through a lot of courses. They have on-the-job training. And it's difficult because some people are natural investigators. They're inquisitive, and you know, initially they may start an investigation, you know, in their beginning years of their career, following the active pharmaceutical ingredient. Okay, it's going to come from so-and-so company. It's going to come on a truck. It's going to come through receiving. It's going to be sampled there. It's going to be in a 55-kilogram drum. It's going to reside in this warehouse. So all the questions that go into there, okay, how long can that API sit in that drum? How long before it settles? How hot is the warehouse? So those types of ways of thinking is taught at an early stage. Then the later stage, I used to like to call it circling the wagons. You know, circling the wagons means, you know, when there's an issue, you know, I will give the firm every opportunity to come forth with all the information that they have about a particular situation that we're investigating. And when you allow them to bring all the documents, then that's assumed to be everything about that particular issue. If later, a day or two later, I come to a situation where I said, well, I had asked for everything regarding this situation, and this document wasn't brought to me, then we have a little problem. So, you know, the way you ask questions, that's taught to the investigators. You know, you can ask a simple question, bring me all of your out-of-specification results for the last 2 years. Or you can ask the same question by saying, bring me all of your unanticipated laboratory results for the last 2 years. Same question, two different ways of answering it. A lot of different ways of responding to that question. However, responding to, give me all your unanticipated laboratory results means anything that's not anticipated. We do a laboratory analysis, we anticipate a result. I want to see all your unanticipated results, which includes, alert levels, action levels, failures, everything. So that's the kind of progression in the investigator's abilities. I think that's a pretty good example.
So in this readiness room, you got lab notebooks, chromatography data, output? I mean, you got all of this stuff?
Well, for a general inspection, again, it'll be pulled from the doc center or wherever the documents are stored, because it is a general inspection. But if you are having a pre-approval inspection, you anticipate it ahead of time and you prepare the back room with all the supporting documentation, reports, protocols, notebooks, chromatography data, water data, environmental control data, all of the things that you know support the manufacture or the commercialization of your new product or process. You should have that all available in the back room and have it reviewed. Based on the timeline that you file and the acceptance of an NDA or an ANDA, you can anticipate the timelines, and you know that the inspection is going to have to take place a month or two before a PDUFA or a GDUFA date. So you would want to take that as an end point a couple months before and prepare for that date.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, bottom line was once you file it, you've opened the door, right?
Yes.
I mean, right? Isn't that the way it works, Joe? Once it's in, the district is told that these guys are up for inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
So, I mean, bottom line, the way we always looked at it is once we pull the trigger, that's it. We put out the shingle, we're ready.
Yeah, and it's kind of like if you're going to have people over for dinner over the weekend, you clean the house up, make sure there's nothing lying on the floor. Well, it's the same philosophy, right?
Yeah.
You know you're going to have an investigator come in, make sure there's nothing out of the ordinary, because for a skilled investigator, these are signs and signals that perhaps the firm might be a little overwhelmed. Simple things. We have sloppy, stupid items, and then we have real issues. Get rid of the sloppy, stupid stuff right off the bat.
Okay. While we're on the topic of sloppy and stupid, so document goes missing. So what do we do now? Let's you first, Dina.
Yeah, no, I've actually lived through that during an inspection.
Really? Honestly? Yeah.
Who hasn't? That's why preparing up front so you know where your gaps are is critically important. If it's possible to recreate a document, you can recreate it and annotate it as such that this has been a replacement for a lost original, and an annotation that once the original is found, the copy will be replaced. But sometimes you just find a situation where you just have lost a document. And if that's the case, if you've just lost a document, you just have to acknowledge it and say, we are having difficulty finding this document, and we will let you know before the end of the inspection if we are able to locate it or not. And if you're not able to locate it, you better have an impact assessment ready to say whether or not there's any impact on your product that's out in the market.
So on a seasoned investigator, I mean, what's that trigger? I mean, obviously it's what document is it, right? I mean, that's number one.
What we're talking about is data integrity, right?
Yeah.
Data integrity started in the 1980s with the generic drug scandal. The agency came out with the application integrity policy, which has morphed into data integrity of 2016. Data integrity basically comes down regarding investigators. Does the investigator have a trust in the documents being given to them by the firm? Okay, if it's one document, right, and nothing else, okay, look them in the eye, tell them what happened. Hey, we can't find this document. If it's a sign and symptom of that firm, then it's one more, issue that has to be overcome. So it really comes down to trust.
Yep. Originals, copies, what? What do you usually have ready to go, Dina? I mean, obviously.
It varies from company to company, but I've always brought in original documents. I know some other companies that will only bring in copies of every document, but I've always wanted to see the original documents. Even if I've got a contract manufacturer, I always work off of original documents. And as I'm looking through all of my original documents, at the same time, I'm looking to tell a story about the firm, right? You're looking at the documents as they're laid out. You look at the development report as it leads into your submission batch record, as it leads into your proposed validation plan, as it leads into your commercial records. And you want to look for key threads and stories about Are the parameters the same? Does the process run the same way as it originally did? And if it doesn't, have a good explanation as to why.
Let me ask you something. I mean, obviously, today we talked about 3 people. Obviously, the CMOs have become more and more proficient at what they do. Okay, so we've contracted out whatever product it is. We got a CMO doing it, and you're a reasonable sized firm. So how do you manage something like that? I mean, who leads it? Who's in? It seems to me that would be that could be a nightmare too. So what's been your experience with that?
Well, I did some work with a virtual firm that said that they were virtual, but when I got in, I found out they really weren't fully virtual, but was using CMOs for contract manufacturing. If you own the application, you cannot give away your responsibility for adequate oversight. You have the responsibility and the obligation to make sure that what your contractors are doing meets the requirements of your regulatory application. Whether that's through a quality agreement, whether that's through periodic audits, whether that's through the use of an independent auditor on a period basis, you still have the obligation as the owner of a regulatory application, even if you don't have a laboratory, don't have a manufacturing site, don't have a packaging site, and aren't doing any finished product testing.
So who do they investigate?
The
virtual?
They're going to investigate that your contractors.
Who's ever signed the letter? Right?
Your contractors are going to be listed in your application.
Right.
As your contract labs or whatever other contracted service providers they are. So they typically will go and visit the contract lab and contract manufacturers. But if you're doing your pharmacovigilance and complaint handling through the virtual firm, don't be surprised if they don't show up for a visit at a virtual firm too.
Joe, that's got to be a nightmare.
It's different. Back in the day when I first started in 1994 as an investigator, I would typically go to a facility and we would have everything right there. Soup to nuts, packaging, ADEs, everything was in that one building. Now it's spread out. However, I mentioned one of the courses that all investigators learn is law and evidence development. At the beginning of their careers, they go over the Park case, the Dodder-White case, the Parfait case. And these cases provide the history of the law. The FDA 42 is issued to the most important person at the facility. In lieu of that most important person being at that facility, if they're away, then they have given the right to someone else to accept that 482. One of the other things is when you contract out, that is a natural extension of the firm. We believe that is just like if the firm was doing packaging in their own facility and they've contracted it out, we don't look at it. We look at it as the responsibility of that firm to oversee that operation, whatever it is, contract lab,
Right.
pharmacovigilance.
But that's it. The data integrity starts whoever, you're the sponsor on
Across
the
the
NDA.
board.
Right, that's
Across
it.
the board.
So managing stuff like that's got to be tough. I mean, it sounds to me like that's probably more of a challenge than managing one not simple, but an in-house inspection. So that's got to take some time.
Well, I think it's also important to remember that your relationship with your contractors is not a checkbox activity. I've got a quality agreement. Check. They have been audited by FDA in the last year. Check. We meet with them monthly. Check. Okay, it's not a check-the-box activity. You have to be intimately engaged with your contractors and have a regular, honest, and open dialogue with your contractors to make sure that they're not inadvertently putting you at risk. Some contractors are very, very closed-mouthed, and I actually found a situation whereby I had 2 batches of a product that were rejected because it was an incorrect weight. They had 2 electronic systems whereby one of the systems hadn't finished tearing out yet before it reported a weight. So they ended up overcharging an API and we had a super potent lot. Well, I went to the contract manufacturer and our quality agreement was in place and they gave me a copy of the deviation. But I went down for a 4-cause inspection about 2 months later because I wanted to know how they finally resolved that issue to assure that it could never happen again. Their CAPA was to have the manager there when the weighings took place. Well, I didn't think that was very robust, so I went down 2 months later, visited this contractor, and came to find out that they had put an IT solution in to actually make sure that the systems had to stabilize with each other before the step could be performed. And I said, well, where's the change control for that? And they gave me a copy of the change control, and I said, well, how come you didn't notify me about this? And it says very specifically in the quality agreement that they don't provide us task items for general systems. Well, that was just a cute way of putting in a change control and using it in a different term that we didn't know and didn't understand, so that they didn't have to share it with us. So that's why I'm saying you have to be very, very engaged with your contractors and know those that are forthcoming versus those that may not be quite as forthcoming.
You know, I have a couple of questions, but let's just stay on one thing. We talked about data integrity. What are the most common areas in the industry that are cited? I mean, in your experience, and we'll talk to Joe. So what do you think right now? If I got whacked, it's usually what? Data integrity number one? Then what's next?
Failure to follow procedures is probably number two.
Failure to investigate,
Yeah.
right? What else? Not following procedures, the big one.
Yeah, I think that's probably the top three.
Okay. Joe, what do you think?
We mentioned sloppy, stupid, you know.
Yeah.
The both ends of the spectrum are sloppiness. And then, you know, like the guys at Volkswagen, where there was a really a conspiracy to withhold information and do things in a way that was not on the up and up. Okay, those guys acted in concert together. It was more than one person, right, to deceive. So you have something that's sloppy, right? You have Post-it notes on a laboratory monitor. You may have a couple of investigators use the same password. Then there's a devious racket going on over here. Then you have everything in between. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you talk about corporate culture. You know, after being with the agency for 21 years, you know, you can, Dennis Guilfoyle here for 41 years, you kind of know, you know, the signs and signals of firms that have a problem and who are just sloppy and need just a little help in their daily work ethic.
So you guys pretty much know who's blowing smoke up your britches there, I got this feeling. That's the way that works.
Pretty much.
Let me, so, having said that, so what's the execution mechanism here? I want it to go like, you know, I want them to come in and I want them to go away and I want this to happen, end. So what's your recommendation, Dina? I mean, let's call it. It's a general inspection. I mean, if everybody here took notes, the answer is if you follow this 6 points, you're gonna, what's the deal?
Like I said, I think the more lists that you have available, so you're ready to go on the first day to start fulfilling those requests. Practice makes perfect. If you haven't had an inspection, take advantage of using an external resource potentially to come in to make sure what someone termed that you're not drinking your own wine. You want to make sure that you get an independent set of eyes looking at your systems and controls. I recommend every other year. Treat your internal audits just like you would an FDA regulatory audit. I know I was very guilty of kind of blowing off my internal auditors because I knew them and it's like, go away, you're just making my life difficult for me. But if you start to use that as an opportunity to treat it as an inspection and report to senior management at the end of the day with a wrap-up, just like you were during an FDA inspection, it ups the ante within the organization. And I can't impress enough the cultural aspects of a company, and they come through very quickly and very early on. I've done auditing for more years than I'd like to count at this point, and very, very quickly, when you go in the door, you get a sense of the corporate culture of a company and their willingness to be open and honest with you. Some of it's tangible, some of it's intangible. But I just think it's really important that you're gonna set that tone on that very, very first day. And the employees in the company, if you happen to be hosting that inspection, are gonna set the tone from the people that are hosting that are in the room with the FDA. So it's really important that you train your runners and your scribes and your hosts to be positive, to be calm, to come out and give updates from time to time, and to keep people away from that readiness room. Because what happens is the entire company tends to descend because everybody wants to know what's going on. So I think it's really important. I mean, we literally would put up physical barriers at the two doors to stop people from coming in from time to time. But again, all the more practice that you do, the better off you'll be in the long run.
So, Joe, what do you think? Obviously, you got 20 plus years in. So, you think we're holding, obviously technology's moved on, drug products become more effective. Obviously, FDA's holding companies up to a higher standard now. Is that what you think?
Well, the rules have been out since the 70s, right? You either abide by the rules or you don't abide by the rules. But there are those firms that want to abide by the rules and just can't. And, whenever we had a judicial recommendation at a New Jersey district, I would have the compliance officers have one sentence in every recommendation to Office of Chief Counsel, and that would be, this firm has proved that they are either unable or unwilling to be in compliance with the regulations. That's it. Whether that was given a warning letter, then a regulatory meeting, untitled letters, given multiple opportunities to come into compliance, and they were either unwilling or unable to come into compliance. Therefore, we need to seek help from the court to bring that firm into compliance. So that's what it comes down to. The rule book's out. Everybody knows it.
Yeah, I got you. I gotta. One of the things I have to just ask, because it kills me. We go crazy trying to, everything. We're all sitting here because we all want to be prepared. Well, there's these guys out there doing compounding. Not like we learned at the pharmacy school. These guys are doing with the intent to distribute a product. I mean, this has got to be something that's been trying to fly under the radar. Where is this stuff at, Joe?
Well, with the New England Compounding Center, that brought it to light, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how many people died in that event, but that just goes to show. I mean, that has been around for 30 years. Pharmacy compounding and the side effects of such has been around for a long time, and it took this event to really bring the light onto it. And I think you're going to see a much better scrutiny of that industry now. But unfortunately, that's the way things have been. We had the thalidomide incident in the early 60s. Prior to that, it was sulfanilamide in 1932. And as a result, of those tragic events, the laws change. So it's kind of a reactive, way of doing things. And hopefully we can be a little bit more proactive, in the future.
Well, I think we are. I mean, one last question, and we're gonna take some questions. To me, one of the things that drives me nuts with some clients and with companies in general is their propensity to pile everything into the annual report. I mean, what has been they're not getting a free ride on this. And when you tell them that, all you've done is delayed your pain, okay? In fact, you probably put yourself more at risk in this particular case. What's your take on that, Dina?
Well, I think you've got to have a really good change control program, but even from my perspective, the understanding of what a change is within a company is absolutely crucial to make sure that all your changes do go into a change control system that can be managed for completion. I see that changes to facilities, changes to equipment typically occur, or repair and maintenance on equipment, typically will happen, and a lot of times there's no record. Like, I'll look at a batch record and I'll see that a process had a 10-day interruption in between. I look at the logbook, there's no repair and maintenance for the machine. And nobody could tell me why the process stopped for 10 days. That's never a good thing. But understanding what change is, understanding when and where you have to document the change, the cross-referencing between a change control and an event, if that's associated with an event, those are absolutely critical so that the people that aren't doing the quality control aspect of your business will be aware and understand that if I'm not sure if I should do an engineering change notice on this or not, or I'm not sure, that they'll go and they'll ask their supervisor rather than just doing things independently on their own. I mean, the educational component of training your employees and bringing up their level of understanding of you have to do things in a controlled context. Because like everybody's trying to do everything fast, they're trying to just get it done, get the line back running, and we'll worry about it later, right? That's what we typically deal with. I don't care how you get it done, just get it done. But take the 30 seconds to take a breath. Get together with your quality colleagues, your manufacturing colleagues, your engineers, your maintenance mechanics, and don't forget your operators. Enter a room for 30 seconds to talk about what needs to happen.
Thank you very much. With that, that closes our session. Thank you very much.
Pharmaceutical Processing, in conjunction with INTERPHEX 2016, presents INTERPHEX Live.